What is up, boys and girl? So, today I'm going to talk about my CoCoMancer, also known as the CoCoMancer. This is a duelist, it is a summoner, it uses cast and crit, and cyclone. I'll tell you why exactly it's cool to me. It's essentially like playing an SRSer and I like playing a cycloner, which are two of my favorite builds. And yeah, it's been working out pretty okay. A lot of people have been asking, why would you even do this? Why not just play an SRSer or play a Cycloner? And to me, it really does improve both of those builds, at least for solo play. I don't know about group play. Right now it does more than enough damage. I can actually show you for a little bit. It does more than enough damage. I don't know how it's going to turn out endgame. This is just a diary. I'm only level 71. I got a bunch of mediocre gear. You know, I'm still using a tabula. Although I've been doing some testing and the 6-link it's pretty good. I mean, it's a cast and crit build. Most of these builds do require a 6-link, but the 6-link is pretty good. So this is Merciless Dry Lake, again 67 zone, 71 character, nothing out of the ordinary. And yeah, like any SRS, we gotta get our flesh offering up, and then we just cyclone through things. And they clean up everything. Make sure to use a good filter that lets you know every time something drops off screen, because there's going to be a lot of off screening. I use a filter that makes me know about just about anything valuable, so you can get that off of my stream if you want. And yeah, I mean, you get the idea, right? We just cyclone through things, leave a bunch of SRSs behind. Go over here, why not? Let's kill these. Let's say I run past all of this stuff. Oh! Oh, excuse me. Would you look at that? Let me kill this guy real quick. Let's not pull a Ziggy D here. Wow. Everyone's gonna get so mad that this video is gonna be so long. Oh. Thank you, a game. I actually really needed that. Alright, let me show you again, since that was not a good display. I essentially leave a bunch of stuff behind, right? I keep it moving, I use the flesh offering. Let's say this is, right, I keep running. I essentially leave all this stuff behind. Everything is cleared. All the mobs around that I didn't even attack, you know, they're all cleared up. So that's the point of the character. Leave a bunch of SRSs behind you while you're still moving, still having the great movement speed that we have with all this stuff. And I don't even have all the nodes and like all that. The movement speed's gonna get even better. But yeah, you get the idea. Wow, this Exalted Orb looks good in my inventory. Okay, since the video is already long. So, again, the reason why I think this is better than both of like a regular Cycloner and an SRSer is because the way Cyclone works is that it's essentially small AoE, a lot of single target, and nothing really else. This takes the same amount of single target, takes the same amount of AoE, although it's not instantaneous damage, so you have to keep that in mind. But we do have a pretty tanky character. And we gain the AoE of an SRSer without really sacrificing anything other than maybe Leech. But the character uses armor, a lightning coil, taste of hate. We have permanent fortify with the champion stuff, because it is a Ascendant champion. So it's essentially an improved Cyclone build. Now, what's better than a regular SRSer build is that since we put the SRSs directly onto the mobs, there's no travel time, there's no risk, right? You don't have the awkward period of, you know, casting, I actually can't do it, of casting your SRSs and them just standing around for like a split second. Well, it's not really a split second, it's like half a second. They just stand around, they don't do anything. Then they start moving to the mob, you know, they headbutt it once, and they think for a little bit again, and then they do it again, or they travel to the other thing. There's nothing like that. You know, you put them directly on the mob, and essentially whatever is left of your SRSs to travel further is increased AoE. So it works like an SRSer, but better, because we get rid of the initial time. You can argue that you have to still run to the mobs, but we're using a Devoto's Devotion, we're using Cyclone, you know, we got movement speed here, we gain movement speed through our Unstoppable Hero, we gain movement speed through Inspirational. We have a lot of movement speed. Later on, I'm going to be using an Onslaught Flask also once I get the defenses to a point where I really want it. So our mobility is high enough to justify this, and we can also use the movement speed to trigger our Cyclone more and more, which essentially results in more SRSs, meaning more damage. And yeah, that's the basic gist of it. I just kind of wanted to explain that, because again, people have been asking a lot. We do use a Tripanon, we do use a Devota's Devotion, currently using a Tabula. I'm using 2 Elrond rings. I think later on I won't have to use 2, but since they're so cheap this league, because most cast and crit builds just play, I actually can't show you because Ascendancy. Most people actually, as a cast and crit build, play a Trickster nowadays, meaning that the Cyclone is essentially free because they gain all the mana regeneration. So getting these was really, really cheap, and later on you will most likely only need 1. So I think it's a really worthwhile investment. You do need to get a lot of resistances on your gear. Like, this thing has a lot. I even sacrificed movement speed, which I will be changing in the future. It is an armor character, so you also have to keep that in mind. You know, I have armor here, pretty mediocre resists. I have some resists here, and then that's really about it. All of this gear, in terms of resists, is pretty mediocre, but I'm going to try and get this character to a point where it can use a lightning coil, and I will have enough elemental resistance. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do that yet. Probably through jewels, probably through just getting less armor since the defenses should be high enough. But yeah, let's maybe talk about the links real quick. So we do use minion damage, melee splash, cyclone, melee physical, cast and crit, summon raging spirits on our main setup. If we were to, depending on the chess piece that you want and what colors you want, if we were to only use this on a 5-link, you know, we remove either the, not the melee splash, god damn, never remove the melee splash, a melee physical, or we remove a minion damage, right? Again, depending on our colors. Something that's incredibly useful is the Generosity Hatred. You don't have to get it linked with anything, but the reason why this is so good is because this means that the Hatred does not affect our damage, meaning that if we use Cyclone, I only have lightning damage here. This lightning damage is there on purpose because of my gloves, because it is a EE build. So that's incredibly important. The EE gives us a ton of damage, minus 50 to resistances, since, you know, half of our SRS damage is fire, and then Hatred also grants us an additional more than 34% because we do use it on Generosity. It's huge. So keep that in mind. Don't get any like cold damage or fire damage on your gear because it will mess up your character. And getting a pair of gloves like these ones is incredibly cheap. Right. Flame Dash for mobility, haste, we have to run it because movement speed, and obviously it's great for the SRSs. Let me turn this thing off. Immortal Call, increased duration, and feeble caster damage taken. Later on, I will be getting rid of the Immortal Call and the increased duration and replacing it with most likely a Fortified Guardian. Guardian increasing our damage by a ton. The Enfeeble might still stay there. I might still keep the caster damage taken, or I might throw in a Golem in there. I actually have no idea just yet. We'll see how that turns out. I definitely don't want to be using Immortal Call though, because we will be getting 6 endurance charges, so it's pretty freaking important to not have this Immortal Call, considering how much Fizz mitigation we already have, and the endurance charges will be very helpful on like elemental weakness maps or in general against resistances whenever you don't have your warding potion up. Desecrate, Flesh Offering, Vengeance, Cast on Critical Strike. This is a weird one. This does work, since the Vengeance crit chance doesn't show here. It is based off of our weapon, so we always crit. And yeah, this is essentially to speed it up so that we don't have to cast Flesh Offering. It doesn't take that long to cast Flesh Offering, especially if you've got a Vol Haste up, but it has been quite helpful at times. I'm still trying to work it out, how exactly I want to do it. I might put in my weapon in the future because I do want an increased duration on it in the future for permanent uptime, because it does trigger quite often. But yeah, nothing set in stone there. Definitely helpful though at times, especially on bosses, right, where you don't really, sometimes you don't get a lot of ads. You can use your own Flesh Offering, or this can just keep triggering. It's such a huge damage increase. It's very important to keep your Flesh Offering up, unless you already do enough damage, but for bosses most likely you won't anyway. Increased duration, Flesh Offering, Vol Haste, Summon Chaos Golem. Chaos Golem doesn't matter, you can use whatever. Increased duration with Flesh Offering is incredibly important, unless we get this to work exactly the way I want it to, and then Volk Haste, a necessity for any SRS or Cyclone build, I think. That's really about it. You know, I have very random potions right now, so don't really want to talk about those, but I will be using an Onslaught Flask in the future. This Basalt will be a, actually, will it be a Taste of Hate, since that gives me cold damage? Most likely I'm not going to use a Taste of Hate. What a surprise. I still might use, well, it's not really that big of a difference. It's just elemental damage, and we already will have a ton of life, and we already will have a ton of mitigation, so yeah, I might get rid of this entirely, or maybe get rid of the Quicksilver, use an Onslaught there, and keep this thing. Most likely not, though, because the Fizz mitigation will be huge. Even now, with a Tabula Rasa, I have 3.2k armor. You know, that's pretty freaking good. I mean, yeah, if we get the coil, it's pretty good. Okay, so I should have probably talked about this before I talked about everything else, because there is a decision here. Right? First time I played this character, it was a Necromancer. And since then, I've decided that a Duelist is better. But it's, in my opinion, better not for the right reasons. Okay, so this was essentially my Witch tree, at least for the most part, and this is my Duelist tree. Boom. So, you might think, but Rise, you know, a necromancer has like duration, and they have Mistress of Sacrifice, and you can get Fleshbinder for reduced physical damage taken. You know, Soul Weaver is really good. You might want to go for Spirit Eater. Sadly, at this stage of the game, there are many problems with this. First of all, Mistress of Sacrifice is a non-permanent buff, which is actually really annoying to keep up. As I've played this character before, I thought Flesh Offering is a lot more essential than it actually was for general, like, white mob clearing. So, you don't really have it up all that much, and a Duelist gains just about the same buffs as you would from this by default if you pick the champion subclass. So with that we get like 30 movement speed and 30 attack speed, and it's not permanent. You don't have it up at all times. You just have it up whenever you you know, you cast the Flesh Offering, right? So we gain 10% movement speed here. We gain another 8% movement speed here. We obviously gain ignore all movement penalties from armor, so that's a little bit more. We gain all this attack speed, right? That's like what? 12 attack speed plus another 12, 24. We get attack speed from Unstoppable Hero, so that's already more attack speed that we get there. And essentially the travel nodes are also better. God damn it, this CoC tree. Okay, and the duration, honestly, it doesn't matter one bit. You can keep up your Flesh Offering and your Volhaze just fine. And obviously the SRSs don't need it because of the changes recently. The next thing, Spirit Eater. Spirit Eater, you can see there's a damage note here, and Spirit Eater is a tricky one. Not only is it if you've consumed or destroyed a corpse recently, so it's not permanent, it's only when you use Flesh Offering. It's only for 4 seconds. That's already bad enough. But then the node is actually bugged, and whenever you use it, and whenever the recently effect ends, it lags. So, in my opinion, it's completely unplayable. Even if they fix it, it's not good enough to use compared to the permanent buffs that Inspiring has to offer for us from the Duelist, right? So 35% increased damage, 10% movement speed. That's essentially always there. It is nearby. It is a 40 radius, but that's like more than 3/4 of the screen for me. And that's honestly more than enough. If your SRSs aren't already killing everything that you've went through at that point, you really should focus more on your damage and your jewels having more increased minion damage, right? Or maybe, well, attack speed is really not a good way to scale this build. But, yeah, that's why I think it's a noob trap. And then obviously Fleshbinder, you and your minions have 1% additional physical damage reduction for each zombie you own. You might get like 7 zombies at most Uh, even, but you'd have to invest into defensive nodes to keep them up. So, in my opinion, it's bad. Soul Weaver is definitely something strong. However, going with just the theme of the character, I've decided that things like the attack speed from over here and the mobility and also the +2 to melee weapon and an armed range, which is huge, are way better than that. The Master of the Arena, that's why I said, like, in my opinion, Duelist is better, but for all the for all the wrong reasons, because it doesn't boil down to Ascendancy. In my opinion, it boils down to Master of the Arena, more than anything else. Because if you see, we can't really afford to travel down there if we go with this class, because we have to take all these mana nodes, all these useless nodes. While with the Duelist, the travel nodes essentially guarantee that, and we get a jewel on the way, which is huge for any summoner. Ooh, this has been a lot of words. So, that's kind of disappointing, but at the same time, a Duelist Summoner, I mean, it's pretty cool. I think a Duelist Summoner is definitely cooler than a Witch Cycloner. But yeah, if you want to be really hipster, maybe you want to do it with a Witch. Obviously, the Fortify was a huge factor. Keeping up the Fortify was a big problem for the Witch. But if you're into really annoying things, you can kind of do it, but then keep in mind that sometimes you're just not attacking, and something can off-screen you, something can run up to you and attack you before you attack it. And you have to rotate through different abilities, and we already have so many things on our skill bar. Which seems better, but it's really, 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 really freaking not. Yeah, I think that's about it. I explained all the choices, I think, because a lot of people asked about that. The way you level this, I just got a Tabula Rasa and leveled with a 6-link Summon Raging Spirits. Honestly, it was good enough. Throw in a, use Life Sprigs for the cast speed, use a Clear Mind Jewel, throw a added Lightning Trap, Multi-Trap into the Life Sprig, and you're more than set. Use that for AoE, and then use your SRSs for single targets. Still keep on using Melee Splash, though, because they're going to come in handy in other situations as well. Are obviously great for clearing up whenever Lightning Trap fails to roll a high roll and instantly kill the mobs. And the pathing, yeah, just get out through here as fast as possible. Try and get to the summoner nodes, Grave Pact, Potency of Will. You do get a lot of life anyway, because you get this life and you get this life while leveling. And then yeah, just keep on taking, life, mana nodes, all that good stuff, depending on what exactly you need. If you feel like your character needs a little bit more damage, go for the damage nodes. If you feel like your character needs a little bit more survivability, go for those. Maybe you need mana because you don't have 2 Elden Rings, you only have 1 right now. Maybe pick up Quick Recovery. It's a very gimmicky character. Most likely in the beginning, you're also going to have to take mana flows. It definitely doesn't work at any point into the league. It's definitely super gimmicky, so keep that in mind. A lot of things that are untested yet. I don't know how exactly it's going to turn out. All I know is that it's really fun to play, and I highly recommend checking it out at least once, especially since even though it needs all this like tricky shit to work, it's still quite attainable. It's easy to get, except one thing I can show you guys as a fucking bonus. Even though it's not, there's one cool thing you can do. You can try and corrupt a Tripanon to have +2 weapon range. It's easier than it looks, but I am never lucky. So that's the way it looks for me. But yeah, the +2 weapon range is huge, as I've talked before. So if you can get that, you can later on use a Verici to put the collars and links and sockets on it, however, whichever way you want, whichever way the build ends up. So also keep that in mind. Another really gimmicky thing that in my opinion is really cool, if you actually get it to work. Not expensive. These weapons are like 1 fusing. I've been literally paying 1 fusing, 2 alks for them, which is half a chaos, and then a Volorb, which is also like half a chaos. So each one of these is 1 chaos at most, and the chance really isn't that low. You can definitely get it. Don't buy them though before I do, because I need a lot of them. Yeah. Well, now that I've got my Exalted Orb, I guess it won't really be a problem. Alright. I haven't released a 20-minute video in a while. I think this is more than appropriate. as the YouTube content has been kind of non-existent lately. But I hope this was informative. I hope you guys understand a little bit more about my perspective and why this build is so cool and why you should probably check it out too if you have the time. Yeah, I'll make an update video definitely because I'm having a lot of fun with it, and hopefully by then I have decided on all the links and all that stuff. Thanks again for watching. Hope you guys have a great time and see you next time. Bye.